Welcome to the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood, a liberal religious home since 1896. My name is Dawn Walter, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. Whoever you are, whomever you love, we welcome you. Whatever your heritage and culture, we welcome you. Whatever your race or gender expression or age, we welcome you. Whatever your theology, we welcome you into our beloved community where we celebrate life, ask hard questions, and work for a more just world. This morning, not really many announcements, just to be aware that the COVID level we are at right now is the severe risk level, which is like maroon colored, very pretty. According to our COVID guidelines, we will not be meeting in person as long as we are at this level, at the severe level. So once a week, at least on Realm and also on the Saturday e-blast, you'll get information on what level we're at and what the plan is for Sunday. So please keep an eye on that. Thanks.
Unitarian Universalism is diverse in its theology, and there is diversity in the symbols that hold meaning for us. One symbol we share is our flaming chalice. Developed as a symbol of the Unitarian Service Committee as it helped to rescue folks in peril during World War II, the chalice has long stood for hope in challenging times. It remains for us a solid reminder of our strength and our values in moments of injustice and uncertainty. If you have a chalice at home, we invite you to light yours as we light ours. Please join in the words that will be on your screen. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action as we gather together in the circle of community. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
And now I'll ask you to take a deep breath and listen as we center ourselves in stillness with the ringing tone of our bowl. Our first poem today is by Joyce Roop. It's called Winter's Cloak. This year, I do not want the dark to leave me. I need its wrap of silent stillness, its cloak of long-lasting embrace. Too much light has pulled me away from the chamber of gestation. Let the dawns come late. Let the sunsets arrive early. Let the evenings extend themselves while I lean into the abyss of my being. Let me lie in the cave of my soul, for too much light blinds me, steals the source of revelation. Let me seek solace in the empty places of winter's passage, those vast dark nights that never fail to shelter me.
Good morning. I'm Carol Wolf, and along with Deb Goodell, I'll be hosting this Zoom poetry service. If poetry is our guiding light, then where does poetry come from? Sometimes it just arrives at an early age, as Pablo Neruda expressed in his poem, Poetry, read by Jean Nemitz.
Hello, this is Jean Nemitz with a poem called Poetry by Pablo Neruda. And it was at that age, poetry arrived in search of me. I don't know where it came from winter or a river. I don't know how or when. No, they were not voices, they were not words nor silence, but from a street I was summoned, from the branches of night, abruptly from the others, among violent fires or returning alone. There I was without a face, and it touched me. I did not know what to say. My mouth had no way with names. My eyes were blind, and something started in my soul, fever or forgotten wings. And I made my own way, deciphering that fire. And I wrote the first faint line, faint without substance, pure nonsense, pure wisdom of someone who knows nothing. And suddenly I saw the heavens unfastened and open, planets, palpitating plantations, shadow perforated, riddled with arrows, fire and flowers, the winding night, the universe. And I, infinitesimal being, drunk with the great starry void, likeness, image of mystery, felt myself a pure part of the abyss. I wheeled with the stars. My heart broke loose on the wind.
Poetry often springs from astonishment. Thought I was unmuted. Excuse me. Poetry often springs from astonishment, perhaps from something unexpectedly beautiful in nature. Joan Laurie Poole, a member of our Unitarian Society of Ridgewood poetry group and a published poet, wrote this poem about icicles. You icicles, seen through albino carrots hanging in the air, walrus tusks of ice paralyzed on rock until the thaw, adherence to slick, meant to make a point, a point, a point, a point. You must submit to drip and drip and drip, then disappear. To be a thing a child could grab, break, and put in her mouth. So stinging cold, clear and sharp, not lost, not lost, not lost on melt, melt, melt. Sarah Teasdale, an American poet who won a Pulitzer Prize in 1918 for her collection of love songs, captured another aha moment in her poem, A Winter's Blue Jay. A Winter Blue Jay by Sarah Teasdale. Crisply, the bright snow whispered, crunching beneath our feet. Behind us, as we walked along the parkway, our shadows danced fantastic shapes in vivid blue. Across the lake, the skaters flew to and fro, with sharp turns weaving a frail invisible net. In ecstasy, the earth drank the silver sunlight. In ecstasy, the skaters drank the wine of speed. In ecstasy, we laughed, drinking the wine of love. Had not the music of our joy sounded its highest note? But no, for suddenly, with lifted eyes, you said, "Oh, look, there on the black bough of a snow-flecked maple, fearless and gay as our love, a blue jay cocked his crest. Oh, who can tell the range of joy or set the bounds of beauty?" Wait a second. Here. The wonder of the night stars is what motivated Unitarian poet James Agee in Sure on This Shining Night. And we're going to hear it now in a choral arrangement by composer Morten Lauridsen and performed by the Luther College's Nordic Choir.
Where does poetry come from? Poetry may come from a remembrance of experiences that were part of your childhood. Jane Kenyon remembers treasured Christmas ornaments in her poem, Taking Down the Tree. Give me some light, cries Hamlet's uncle midway through the murder of Gonzago. Light, light, cry scattering courtesans. Here, as in Denmark, it's dark at 4, and even the moon shines with only half a heart. The ornaments go down into the box. The silver spaniel, my darling, on its collar from mother's childhood in Illinois. The balsa jumping jack my brother and I fought over, pulling limb from limb. Mother drew it together again with thread while I watched, feeling depraved at the age of 10. With something more than caution, I handled them, and the lights, with their tin star-shaped reflectors, brought along from house to house, their pasteboard toy suitcases increasingly flimsy. Tick, tick, the desiccated needles drop. By supper time, all that remains is the scent of balsam fir. If it's darkness we're having, let it be extravagant. The next poem was written by Nancy Young, who happens to be my cousin and has been a stalwart contributor to the USR Poetry Group. She is reading her poem, Snow in the South.
Season's greetings. The subdivision on the hill keeps to covenants. White lights only, demure displays, nothing big, and herds of reindeer made of twigs that neither sprout nor prance across the rooftops. The trailer park below the berm props all gates open to boulevards of blinking candy canes, inflated snowmen swaying cheek by jowl with plastic Santas, and a wooden cutout Jesus forever fixed in the manger. The earth that night felt dark, chill. So few sat still to marvel at a star. No bells rang, no carolers sang. Who knew what tidings angels could bring? Only shepherds, a girl, some kings.
That was Season's Greetings, different poem. But the beauty of the first fallen snow has attracted many poets. Next, Jane Sherbow will read White Eyes by Mary Oliver. Then we will hear a choral arrangement of Velvet Shoes by Eleanor Wiley, set to music by the great American composer Randall Thompson. It will be performed by the Girl Choir of South Florida.
Good morning. I'm Jane Sherbow, and this is a lovely poem by Mary Oliver. It's called White Eyes. In winter, all the singing is in the tops of the trees, where the windbird, with its white eyes, shoves and pushes among the branches. Like any of us, he wants to go to sleep, but he's restless. He has an idea, and slowly it unfolds from under his beating wings, as long as he stays awake. But his big, round music, after all, is too breathy to last. So it's over. In the pine crown, he makes his nest. He's done all he can. I don't know the name of this bird. I only imagine his glittering beak tucked in a white wing, while the clouds which he has summoned from the north, which he has taught to be mild and silent, thicken, and begin to fall into the world below like stars, or the feathers of some unimaginable bird that loves us, that is asleep now and silent, that has turned itself into snow.
One of the promises we make to each other in our shared covenant at USR is to support this congregation with our presence, gifts, and service, and to care for each other and the long-term well-being of our community. This is the time in our service when we put that promise into action by reminding each other that we share a vision of justice and freedom for this world and that it will take all of our different talents, gifts, and support to make that vision a reality. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Where does poetry come from? All poets have a passion for words. The process of finding the right ones to convey a particular message can be challenging. Mary Mogerly, another member of our USR poetry group, wrote about this process in her poem, Writing Towards the Mountain.
This is my poem called Writing Towards the Mountain. I will write until I can't find words to make something new. Words woven or mended, words forged with smooth stones in a plashing brook. I put that silly word plashing here for the sound of water, but don't be fooled. Steam pushes from these words, hangs over the water, for those seconds taken to read the words aloud. With each line, something is felt, scarred, dried, like leaves that pull and blow away. I can hope words like these are being stitched in prisons or hospitals, collected on the backs of candy wrappers outside the airport. Here are words to soften cruelty and to inspire love. Age old, they may reminisce from ancient people writing on bark to discovered words on pale brown paper in old books and journals. The words themselves are still new. They belong to now, strained through efforts to be made new and whole, the way each baby's birth makes us whole. Sharp pangs rise over us, grasped and held over our heads, shaped like steel in the icy stream, into a meaning which arrives with the morning and settles like leftover coins laid on the dresser or a single red leaf blown to the top of the roof.
Where does poetry come from? Sometimes inspiration comes directly from our natural surroundings. I've been fortunate enough to spend some real quality time observing nature in the last 2 years, and I wrote this poem a few weeks ago. It's called Survival Lessons. The tracks were large and clumsy, almost ancient, as if a herd of small dinosaurs lost in the present had wandered through the fresh morning snow. What an odd set of footprints, I pondered. Leading away from the steep slope that drops sharply to the stream, the three-toed time travelers veered into a clearing briefly, then turned and trudged on into the forest. Wild turkeys, I realized, of course. Sometimes I could sense them in the woods, dark shapes prattling and bobbing, always elusive, ever watchful. Generations and millennia taught them well. It was always best to stay out of sight. I spied them in the meadow once, feasting on grubs. There were 6 or 7, maybe a few more. Alas, I was not invisible to their keen eyes. In tight formation, they glided across the field, tiny dinosaurs clucking softly, and disappeared into the safety of the woods. I began to notice curious sounds at dusk, utter ruckus from the hilltop every evening. It would start with low-level chatter, then the trees would shake, leaves falling like rain, crashing, flapping, gobbling, then stillness, and the quiet of night would descend. One day I witnessed the spectacle from the stream below. Far above, at the embankment's crest, a lone hen babbled and bobbed, hesitating. Then, in a breathtaking display of survival instinct, she launched herself into a nearby tree, coming to rest precariously in its protective boughs. It was a glorious defiance of physics. In flight, her wings splayed against the fading light, her soaring silhouette resembled the fossil remains of Archaeopteryx, her ancestral mentor. She settled into the darkness with the rest of the hens, safe from fox and bobcats, safe until light. Survival sometimes requires a leap of faith. Laura Lumo May, another member of the USR Poetry Group, is also very inspired by nature. Here she is reading her poem, Pause.
Hello, my name is Laura Lumome, and I'm reading a poem that I wrote called Pause. We watched a lone family of deer picking their way through the trees behind our house, noses deep in the whiteness, sniffing for some edible morsel. We wondered, where do deer go in this blizzard, as we smugly sipped coffee in our heated home? Perhaps deer understand survival, understand snow so much better than we do. How long could we forage? How long could we make a morsel last? I remembered being taught the value of fallowness, to not despair my lack of inspiration, to not mourn the creative spark, to appreciate the deep darkness concealed beneath an infinite pale. The wet, black, iron blood infused darkness that is sealed now in a protective coating of white. To wait. Faith is knowing, waiting, trusting the stillness. Faith is not despairing the emptiness surrounding or the crisp coldness that halts the world. How coincidental that in French, blanc means white, and in English, blanket is a covering that keeps us snugly warm on winter nights. Faith is persisting when you no longer have faith. Watching the world outside deliberately erased by relentless crystals, so elegant, intricate individually, now filling every crevice. I wonder if in the next century, as children read about our time before this time, whether they will wonder why we so frenetically pursued distraction, voraciously devoured experience, gluttonously swallowed the world whole until the microbic world came to swallow us. Delicate tentacles interlace around us, above us, within us, as we hibernate below, enduring the tenaciousness of snow.
We will listen to a different type of poetry now, one that has no words, as we turn to our special music. Lento from Cecile Chaminade's piano trio in A minor. She wrote this trio in 1887 at the age of 30. In this movement, the slow movement, she presents a hymn-like opening section followed by variations on a folk-like theme, and then masterfully combines them both. The music was recorded in my home with violinist Claire Capello and cellist Fawn Wiener. Where does poetry come from? Sometimes it comes from a desire to look at our life from a humorous point of view, or sometimes a satirical point of view.
Hi, I come from Pennsylvania, but I live in the South, and believe it or not, I miss snow. I swirled with snow in dreams each night. We drifted childhood paths of white. Red boots made imprints of my feet. Hope stepped aside at clang of light. I gathered forecasts every day to see when flakes might come my way. But when snow drifted down the street, I'd gone to visit far away. Snow folded empty house and stair, danced past windows lonely, bare. When I returned, I only found cold puddles melted on the ground.
And another satirical look from a wholly different point of view. We have Three Monkeys by an anonymous poet, read by Anita Young, another member of the USR Poetry Group.
Just their ability to Hello, everyone, and good morning. And once again, welcome to the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood's Poetry Service. My name's Anita Young, and I've been a member of the poetry group since it started. One of the things that inspired me to read this poem that I'm going to read to you today is I'm taking a class offered by the Unitarian Society on Wednesdays, which will be ending in 2 weeks. And the name of it is Roots of Human Behavior. And what we are learning there is all about the apes and the various types of monkeys and their behaviors, and whether or not they can learn, how much they can learn, how much is instinct, and just their ability to survive in their environment. So I found this poem and I thought, wow, after listening to these lectures, this poem seemed to be appropriate. So the name of it is Three Monkeys. There's no author attributed to it except anonymous. So here goes the poem. Three monkeys, once dining in a coconut tree, were discussing some things they had heard true to be. What do you think? Now listen, you two. Here, monkeys is something that cannot be true, that humans descended from our pure race. Why, it's simply shocking, a terrible disgrace. Who ever heard of a monkey deserting his wife, leaving a baby starve and ruin its life? And have you ever known of a mother monk to leave her darling with a stranger to bunk? Their babies are handed from one to another and scarce ever know the love of a mother. And I've never known a monkey so selfish to be as to build a big fence around the coconut tree so other monkeys can't get a wee taste, but would let all the coconuts here go to waste. Why, if I'd put a fence around this coconut tree, starvation would force you to steal from me. And here is another thing that monkey won't do. Seek a bootlegger shanty and get in a stew. Carouse and go on a whoopee, disgracing his life. Then reel madly at home and beat up his wife. They call this all a pleasure and making a big fuss. They've descended from something, but not from us. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.
We want to conclude with an uplifting poem as we face the new year. So we've chosen a poem that Carol and I at least think might be considered the poem of the year. And this is The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman, which she wrote and read for Biden's inauguration.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the west. We will rise from the windswept northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked south. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Please join us in the words for extinguishing the chalice. They can be found on your screen. We extinguish the flame, but may the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action burn bright in our hearts until we are together again.
We hope you enjoyed taking a break and listening to some poetry this morning. Before closing, Deb and I would like to thank everyone who contributed to this service, especially Olas Karianis for running tech, Jan Botcher for greeting, and Jack Lohr for helping us all week with making recordings. Our closing words come from Mary Oliver.
Wild geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things.